Hey, what's up everybody? Andrew Steele here. Today I'm going to be interviewing my friend Kyle. He's going to show us his 1991 Prevost bus. The goal of this YouTube channel is to interview RVers and ask them what they like and don't like about their coach, and have them share some of their stories from the road with us. So if this is something you enjoy, please subscribe and follow. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Kyle Starkey, and this is my 1991 Prevost. It's an XL. It was configured by a company called Angola. They were the converter of the coach. If you are unaware, Prevost makes buses for transport and the Greyhound and that sort of thing. And there are a number of converters across the country. There were many more in the early 90s, and we had some consolidation and that sort of thing. So unfortunately, the Angola Coach Company is no longer around. They were making about 6 to 8 coaches a year from what I know. I bought this thing in March. Had never driven anything this big. Had driven an RV that was about 25 feet long. I bought it in March, and then basically 3 days after I bought it, I was on a 6-hour road trip to Moab, where I sat on a tarmac with a bunch of other full-time RVers, living off the grid, which was something I was also not aware of, or not used to. So I was running my gen set and consuming power and running my batteries up and down, and it's a good rig. It's been a lot of fun.
And how long did you full-time for?
I was on the road March till late November.
And where did you go?
So I left here and went to Moab, Utah. I came back here. I headed to Colorado. I went down to Texas. I came back up through Salt Lake. I went to Northern California and spent a few days on the beach in Northern California. From there, I went north into Oregon, spent some time up in Portland. I went east from there to South Dakota, and then across South Dakota into Ohio. I went up to Chicago. I went to Niagara Falls in New York. I went all the way up to Bahaba, Maine, and then started trucking my way back down. Came down through Asheville. Beautiful town, Asheville, North Carolina. If you've never been there and you like beer, it's a great spot. And then came back across Texas and through Tucson, and sort of ended up back here a few days before Thanksgiving.
And what are your favorite memories looking back on that 10-month trip?
Honestly, people ask me what was my favorite place to go. I grew up in Northern California, so sitting on the beach in Northern California is a bucket list for many people. For me, been there, done that, but it was gorgeous. Honestly, I'd never been to South Dakota. I drove through Custer State Park in my Jeep. Had this great RV spot in South Dakota. Ended up, pulling the Jeep off and driving through Custer State Park. About 20 minutes into the trip, I pulled off on the side of the road and tore the doors off my Jeep and stuffed them in the back because I couldn't take it all in. It was such a massive, beautiful view, and I'm not really a scenery guy or a vistas guy. I'm like, yeah, that's nice, cool, but I was blown away by how gorgeous it was. That was amazing. Going up to Maine was beautiful. I loved Maine. It was gorgeous. It was hot as the dickens while I was there, but it was still very nice. I got to spend time with friends all over the country. I spent some time, just to go see friends that I haven't seen that much, right? College buddies, high school friends who had moved around the country, and to not be all up in their house, right? Being a guest for 4 days, right? And I could stay a week. I could stay a month, right? Because I'm not all on top of them, and I got to spend quality time with friends, which was amazing. And then finally, I actually met a group of people on the internet, which is why I went to Moab, called the Escapers. And the Escapers are full-time or mostly full-time RVers who are still of working age. So I found that to be a compelling group of people. And honestly, those folks have made my journey so much better. I get together with them whenever I end up somewhere close by. They got a great Facebook page. I can say, hey, I'm in, Asheville. Where's a good place to get a barbecue? And, 15 people will pop up and say, oh, go to Little Bob's, and, go here, go there. And this is a great beer place down the road. And, it's been an amazing support group. I was traveling by myself. It's just me and my dog. So, I didn't know where I was going, and I didn't really have any direction other than I know this week I'm going west, and I know in a few weeks I'm going south, and then a few months after that I'm going to go east, right? So fine. But it was a whole lot easier to be able to get together with people on the road and say, hey, how are you? Because, sometimes people in the RV parks are not as open to a discussion, or are not of a working age. They are retirees. They're very nice people. I met some great people, but it's a different group than the people I usually hang out with. So it was nice to find that group of, working age RVers. And there are people going anywhere from I got some friends of mine that are in like a 1970 Dodge, van thing. And then I met another guy just out here in Havasu for the Escapers Annual Bash, who's also driving a mid-90s Prevost, right? So and everybody in between. Some of them run solar and some of them don't, and some of them run tow behinds and some of them are fifth wheels. And right now I've got a couple of friends of mine from the Escapers group mooch docking in my driveway, and they're hanging out and they're like, can we come and hang out? I'm like, yep. I've got showers, I've got hot tubs, I've got laundry facilities, I can hook you up with 15 amps of power and walk. And while this has definitely got the 90s flair to it with the pink countertops and the pink day-night shades, it's a lot less ostentatious than some of the other ones that I saw. I mean, I saw a bunch of them that had Scotch cabinets with custom Prevost glassware and that sort of thing, and that's great. I like it a little bit more muted, and don't mind that it's got that little 90s funk to it.
So what else do you like about the bus?
I like how it drives down the road. It's super comfortable to drive. Once you get over the fact that it's as wide as the lane is, and you get to a point where you're sort of pulling to one side to make sure that you're riding down the road. I can sit behind the wheel and drive 4 or 5 hours without too much of a problem. And I'm almost 60 feet tip to tail when I'm towing the Jeep behind me. So, when you start thinking about the fact that you're 42,000 pounds of bus and 20 feet of Jeep behind you, once you get over that fact and you realize that you're going to have to slow early and you're not going to get up going very quickly, it's very easy to drive. It's very simple. I do believe that the industry should require some sort of driver's license. The fact that any idiot with a paycheck can show up and buy a bus this size without any kind of training is a little bit scary to me. I think I'm a pretty good driver, but I think everybody thinks they're a pretty good driver. So, and you get behind this is, like I said, this is 42,000. The new ones are 52 and 55,000. They're huge machines. So it's very comfortable to drive. It's very comfortable to live in. My bus doesn't have slides, so I'm not worried about the slides failing. And that was one of the things I was worried about when I was buying a bus of this age. I'm like, like I said before, I can fix the inside, I can fix the water and the 120 volt power and the 12 volt and that sort of stuff. When you start talking about 5,000 pound slide outs and you have to leave somewhere and something fails, you're toast, right? I mean, now you're stuck. You got to get somebody out to come help you, and maybe you'll be able to get it back in, maybe you won't. And so
what are the biggest problems you've had?
I think the two biggest issues that I ran into were, user errors, to be honest. I was working on the batteries in the front bay, and I hadn't wrapped my tools in any sort of tape. And so when I was undoing one of the 24 volt connections, I arced the hot to the ground of the bus, and it sent a short throughout the bus. It sent both of my ancient inverters into shutdown mode. And then I'm looking online for information about inverters from an inverter company that had been bought 3 times since it was manufactured, and manufactured 27 years ago. And so there's no PDFs, there's no nothing. We finally found some weird little corner of the internet where some guy's like, oh yeah, to turn these back on, back off, you have to lift all 8 battery connections off, let it sit for 30 seconds, and then drop them all back down. And they'll come out of shutdown mode. Well, that's all well and good if you happen to be 110 pounds and have arms, that are, 4 foot long. At 240 pounds with, short T-Rex arms, it's a real bear to get in there and do that. So that was the first thing. We figured that out. I had some help in the park that I was in Park City from a little guy that did solar installs on houses, and so he knew what he was doing, and he's small skinny guy, and he could get in there and get it done. And I was like, awesome. The second thing I ran into is actually another time I smoked all 3 of the air conditioner control boards. And again, they're 27 years old. So trying to get air conditioning replacements is easy, but I don't want to spend $4,500 on new air conditioning when I know the AC units work great. They just don't happen to be controlled right now. So once I got those 2 things sorted, I haven't had too many issues. A couple issues here and there with the leveling system and basic maintenance like oil and I got a 2-stroke diesel in here, so it does chew oil, but it's by design, so you got to keep an eye on it. It's not like a new car where you put oil in, you just kind of drive down the road. Like you actually got to check it. And then the air filters and the air cleaners, and then like I said, I found a good old boy down in Atlanta who actually resolved my over-the-road AC issue, because I was driving it for a good 6 months and it was hot, and I'm running the generator so I can run the 3 air conditioning units on the roof to try and cool the coach down while I'm driving down the road. It works, it's not the most efficient way to go about it. So I found this guy, little shop down in Atlanta. A couple of the Prevost guys had said, "Oh yeah, this is the guy, go talk to him." And he's like, "Shop opens at 6 a.m., be here at 5:50, and we'll have you out in the day." And man, they were on it, and they got it all sorted. Kind of a couple of bad solenoids, some low levels from a refrigerant standpoint. They got me all hooked up and down the road, and now it's ice cold while I'm driving down the road.
What that set you back cost wise?
That was about $1,000.
Okay.
So
what are some of the bigger things cost wise that have gotten you?
Anytime I take it in for bus work, right? That stuff gets expensive because of shop hours, and they're $175 an hour. And to be honest, with this older Detroit diesel, the 2-stroke, not a whole lot of guys want to work on it anymore. They want to be able to plug their computer in and have a bajillion sensors, and it tells you exactly what's wrong. This is a 91 8V92, and it doesn't have too many sensors, and you have to have this really old piece of equipment to even plug into it. So whenever you take it to a Prevost shop or that sort of thing, that's where they start to get you. But it's mostly just that the shop hours are expensive and that sort of thing. So, but onesie twosie things. I mean, I spent $3,500 on new inverters and a color control module. Like I said, if I was going to replace the air conditioners, they're about $1,200 to $1,400 a piece. And then I actually have to find a new 12-volt power source, because the old ones took power off the unit. The new ones require a power source for the actual control head. Okay, but again, none of that it's something I can do, right? It's not something I'm going to pay somebody else to do, because it means, we got to cut holes in cabinets or something like that. And I'd rather be the one that do that than have some guy who doesn't care. Not that everybody doesn't care. I'm just saying that, I care a whole lot more about the way my bus looks and drives than, other people. And honestly.
So you were telling me about how much fuel you spent.
So I went about 18,000 miles last year, and I was tracking my gas to make sure I understood how much fuel I was consuming in both the bus and the Jeep. So every time I'd stop and fill up, I'd put down how many gallons, how many miles, and it would calculate miles per gallon for me. And I spent a little over $9,800 last year in gas, in just diesel, right? So this doesn't include, fuel for the Jeep, doesn't include, campsites or food or anything else. But,
Was it worth it?
Absolutely. All day and twice on Tuesdays. Yes.